The USPS, the United States Postal Service, they're making some big changes to try and, become more efficient. And these changes actually they started April 1st, so they're already in effect, and even more are going to roll out starting July 1st. And it's important because these changes could mean, well, yeah, they could affect how quickly you're getting your mail. So we're talking about a bunch of different types of mail-in packages here. We're talking first-class mail, your standard letters and bills. We got periodicals like magazines and newspapers. And then there's marketing mail, all those flyers and ads that we get, plus package services, which include things like printed materials, media mail, which is for books or recordings. Oh, and also library mail. And then, of course, we've got your USPS grounded Danish, priority mail, and then the speedier option, Priority Mail Express. So what exactly is changing here? Well, it's mainly the delivery speed for certain types of mail. If you look at first-class mail, most of it, something like 75%, will likely stay on the same delivery schedule. But here's the thing, about 14% might actually get delivered faster. Now, on the flip side, roughly 11% could take a bit longer to reach its destination. But even with these changes, all first-class mail should still fall within that 1 to 5 day delivery window that we're used to. So that's good. Now, for those who use USPS Grounded Vantage, that 2 to 5 day delivery window is expected to remain the same. There won't be any changes there. However, for marketing mail, periodicals, and those package services, the delivery windows are actually being shortened. If you live in a rural area, there's a specific aspect of these changes that you might want to pay attention to. There's a chance that the mail you send out could take a little longer to get where it's going. But on the plus side, incoming mail is expected to be delivered more quickly. This has a lot to do with the growing role of these regional processing and delivery centers. Essentially, these centers are meant to centralize operations, make things more efficient, and help the USPS cut down on costs, particularly labor and transportational costs. As of May 2024, if you're in Wisconsin, the closest one of these partially operational centers is over in Chicago. Now, when you look at it from a financial perspective, these new service standards are projected to save the USPS a lot of money, at least $36 billion over the next 10 years. They anticipate these savings to come from lower transportation costs, mail processing, and facility expenses. And it's important to remember the USPS is mainly funded through the sale of postage and other products. They don't rely on taxpayer money. So when you consider they reported a $9.5 billion loss last year, you can understand why these changes are being made. Now, this whole efficiency push isn't a new thing, It aligns with a trend that was really emphasized during President Donald Trump's administration. Remember Louis DeJoy, the former Postmaster General? He was appointed back during Trump's first term. He laid out plans to reduce the size of the USPS workforce. He even reached out to Elon Musk's government efficiency department, DOGE, for their input on tackling what he saw as some major problems within the agency. And just last month, Musk himself made a public statement saying that the USPS should be privatized. Of course, that proposal was met with some pretty strong opposition from the unions representing postal workers. And while privatizing the USPS or even merging it with the Department of Commerce, which was actually an idea Trump brought up back in February, would require congressional approval, experts have expressed concerns about what that could mean. They worry about post office closures, slower mail delivery, and higher prices for postal services. And it seems like rural communities might feel the impact of those changes the most. Now, as for the USPS workforce, they're expecting about 10,000 employees to leave through those voluntary early retirement incentives that were offered. That incentive period ended on April 30th, so we'll see how that plays out. To put it into perspective, the Chicago, Naperville, Elgin metropolitan area, which covers parts of Wisconsin, employs over 10,000 people at the USPS. And that whole thing with DOGE potentially being involved in cost-cutting measures, well, it's actually sparked protests by postal workers all over the country. They're arguing that mail delivery is a vital public service and shouldn't be driven by profit. So if you're curious about how long it might take for your mail to get to its destination, the USPS has put together this new online tool, the Service Standards Map. With this map, you can check estimated delivery times between specific zip codes. It's available on their website, USPS.com. Also, the way they track mail has been updated. It's broken down into 3 stages now. Stage 1 covers the journey from when your mail is collected to when it gets to an outbound processing center. Stage 2 is all about the travel from the outbound processing center to the inbound processing center at its destination. And then finally, Stage 3 tracks it from the inbound processing center to the final delivery every point. Before, the tracking standards mainly focused on stage 2, for this new system aims to give a more accurate and complete picture of where your mail is in the process. Now, when we look at how the USPS gets its funding, well, since a major restructuring back in 1970, it's been mostly self-funded. Like I mentioned before, the bulk of their annual budget, which is a whopping $78.5 billion, comes from the fees we pay for postage and other services. Congress does give them a small annual appropriation, around $50 million in fiscal year 2023. But that money is mainly intended to support free and reduced rate mailing services. Between 2007 and 2020, the Postal Service experienced some pretty substantial losses. They racked up about $87 billion in losses during that time. Factors like a decline in profitable first-class mail volume and those retirement benefit expenses played a significant role in those losses. However, there's some good news. In the most recent quarter, the USPS reported a profit of $144 million. This is a huge improvement compared to the $2.1 billion net loss they reported in the same quarter of the previous year. And it looks like DeJoy's 10-year plan to modernize operations and stop the bleeding is starting to pay off. Speaking of DeJoy, he stepped down from his position as Postmaster General back on March 24th. He informed the USPS governing board about his plans in February and officially resigned on that Tuesday. Until I find a permanent replacement, Deputy Postmaster General Doug Toledo is at the helm. DeJoy's goal was to tackle those projected losses head-on. He wanted to bring them down from a projected $160 billion to $80 billion over the next decade. His strategies included canceling and renegotiating certain contracts, and since 2021, the USPS has cut 30,000 jobs as part of these efforts. DeJoy was pretty vocal about his belief that the Postal Regulatory Commission's pricing models and what he saw as decades of bureaucratic processes were to blame for some of the financial struggles. He argued that they'd cost the Postal Service over $50 billion, but the Commission had a different take. They countered by saying that the USPS had actually wasted $100 billion and was continuing to lose more money, which they claimed was making the USPS less efficient and hurting service quality, especially in rural areas. Now that DeJoy is gone, the USPS Board of Governors has brought in Egon Zehnder, an executive search firm, to help them find a new Postmaster General. As of right now, there's no word on when they might make an announcement about who will be taking the reins. So that's the rundown on some of the major changes and discussions going on at the USPS. We've covered a lot of ground here. If you find this information valuable, make sure to like this and subscribe for more. Thanks for joining me.